It is a joy to be back with you and to introduce our musician for today, Kenzie Ross, who is a member of the class of 2027. She's a second-year business fellow, double majoring in economics, consulting, and marketing, with a minor in interreligious studies, very across-the-board interests there. She works for both the Truett Center and cultural programs to support programs like Newman Lumen, among many others. She's begun undergraduate research in economics and religion and will study abroad in Copenhagen this fall. And I've had the opportunity to hear Kenzie's beautiful music many times at Leaf. So I'm grateful that she gets to share it with us at Newman Lumen this morning. So please help me to welcome Kenzie Ross. This morning, we are pleased to uplift several voices, Kenzie's included, from the Spirit and Pride initiative, which is, you're going to hear more about, but in short is a collaboration between the Truett Center for Religious and Spiritual Life and the Gender and LGBTQIA Center that makes space for the intersection of both spiritual, religious identities and worldviews, and then gender and sexual identities as well. And so we are going to be hearing from two different folks this morning, from a student and a staff perspective. First, from Rabbi Dr. Maor Greene, who serves as the Associate Chaplain for Jewish Life, where they cultivate Jewish spiritual life and multi-faith engagement. They're currently the lead staff person for the Spirit and Pride initiative. And prior to coming to Elon, Maor was previously the Ritual and Music Rabbinic Fellow at Dayenu, a Jewish call to climate action, where they established programming in arts and activism. Their academic research looks at how psalms use imagery to convey harmful intent and impact of violent speech. They're a spiritual director, musician, and outdoor enthusiast, as well as holding degrees from Duke University, Princeton Theological Seminary, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and Jewish Theological Seminary. Let's hear it for Rabbi Maor, and then I'll introduce Ahron.
Good morning, y'all. When I was a college student at Duke University, which at the time was ranked the worst university in the country to be gay, I was involved in our GLB center and in a religious, which was only a GLB, just in terms of the gay, lesbian, bi, and on a religious group on campus. In my religious group, I was reluctantly accepted by others, most of whom disapproved of my sexuality but didn't want to completely exclude me. In retrospect, the situation was not the best for my mental health or for giving me a sense of belonging. In queer community, I felt I needed to hide my religious identity because religion had been a source of trauma for so many queers. Remaining closeted about my sexuality in queer spaces felt ironic and uncomfortable. There was no community that existed on campus where I could show up as my full self, deeply queer and deeply spiritual. What I needed at the time, and what was at that point unimaginable, was an initiative like Spirit and Pride. Launched in fall 2019 at Elon University, which is here, Spirit and Pride has been a unique student-centered collaboration between the GLC and the Truett Center. It's now housed in the Truett Center, but we still work very closely with folks from the GLC. Professional staff have included Reverend Dr. Joel Hartner, Matthew Antonio, Reverend Julie Tonneson, Luis Garay, and myself. And we worked with about a dozen interns over the years to create queer community on campus. LGBTQIA+, not just GLB, students now have spaces to explore, express, and affirm both their queer and spiritual identities without having to choose between the two. Jillian Shore, who graduated in class of 24, was involved with Spirit and Pride as an intern throughout her time at Elon. Here are their words about what Spirit and Pride has meant to them. Faith-based spaces and queer spaces tend to be very specifically catered places. So, personally, as a queer and Jewish student, I found that I had to diminish my queerness within solely Jewish spaces and diminish my religious views within queer spaces. Spirit and Pride is a place where I can bring both of those identities fully, but I can also explore what it means to hold those identities in tandem. Connecting with people of other faiths and backgrounds has grounded me in Judaism. Building friendships with other queer students has helped me feel more comfortable exploring my identity and reflecting on how it has affected my worldview. It is unfair to expect students to prove themselves before they walk through the door, especially for an identity-based space. With Spirit and Pride, there's nothing to be proven. Spirit and Pride meets three main needs of spiritual queers, or in my own head I call them spear queers, on campus. First, it builds community and creates a sense of belonging. Second, it provides educational opportunities. And third, it facilitates corrective experiences for many students who've experienced religious trauma. To meet these needs, Spirit and Pride has developed a variety of programs over the years. Community building events, including coffee chats, crafting nights, earthly queer events, etc. There's a lot of sort of granola queer culture. We like getting out and frolicking. Educational sessions, including Winterfaith and Ripple, tagging on those, as well as standalone events. We developed a podcast, a Queer Divine podcast. Instagram campaigns raising visibility, resource curation, including books that are useful for folks of all religious persuasions struggling with queer identity in those traditions. We've piloted a faith-based ally training. We have held joint training sessions between multi-faith interns and GLC interns. We've co-sponsored Purim celebrations on campus, Hanukkah celebrations, had presence at Elon Pride events, and co-sponsored in various other events on campus. We've engaged in public art, such as the trans artist that is now currently featured in our public hallway space. We've provided opportunities for intergenerational mentoring, which is crucial, I think, for queer thriving, to see that you can make it and be happy in your life. And we've cultivated student leaders through our interfaith intern team. I appreciate that I'm Jewish, Aaron's Jewish, Jillian is Jewish, but in fact, Jews have traditionally been a minority within Spirit and Pride. We've had Jewish interns, Christian interns, both Catholic and Protestant, Buddhist interns, pagan interns, and spiritual but not religious identifying interns. And Spirit and Pride interns have represented at the Interfaith Leadership Summit with Interfaith America. By centering student leadership and interfaith dialogue, Spirit and Pride has become a vital and transformative presence at Elon University. It helps students imagine and embody a fuller version of themselves. Baby queer Maor needed a community like Spirit and Pride when they were in college. It is my privilege and joy now to guide Spirit and Pride as this new generation of spear queers grow into the fullness of who they are. Aaron?
Thank you so much, Rabbi Maor. We're going to continue hearing from Ahron Frankel, who is a member of the class of 2026. Ahron is a strategic communications major as well as a multi-faith intern. And Ahron engaged in this internship in order to learn more about themselves and others through this lens of faith and spirituality. In addition to working at the Truett Center, they enjoy hiking, photography, and are the general manager of WSOE 89.3 FM. And I know that we will be seeing more of Ahron at Holy in a couple weeks. Hopefully you got the memo, there's a rain date. But please help me to welcome Ahron to the podium this morning.
Hello, everyone. I'm a current Spirit and Pride intern, and I just want to talk about what the initiative has meant to me. If you're here at Purim, you're going to hear a lot of the same sort of intersecting identities thing. But I grew up going to a religious Jewish day school in Maryland. It was a super small school, very contained in a little social bubble. It was jokingly called the BT bubble. You didn't make a lot of friends outside of your school unless you already knew them from when you were very, very young. I didn't think much about my queer identity growing up. It was obviously never a thing that was regularly discussed. Even as we got older, it even wasn't something I thought about until I got to middle school. However, I started to think more and more about it in the latter years of my high school, and it became pretty unavoidable. During this time, I made a lot of new friends during COVID virtually who were coming into their own queer identity and introduced me to a lot of people who are already very confident and grown into their identity. I began to spend more and more time away from the people at my high school. I never really felt like I fit in there, but with this new understanding about myself, that was truer than ever. I knew how people at my high school spoke about queer people, felt about queer people, so it was very natural that I pulled away and kept kind of quiet in that environment. Not something I wanted to do, but by the time it was my senior year, I was very ready to leave. And going away to college felt like a great chance for me to break out of the bubble, make a new name for myself, be myself unapologetically. Elon was far enough away from Maryland where this felt like it could be a reality. A lot of schools have queer-based spaces now, which is great. And Elon seemed to have a lot of diverse resources that made it different from some others. I did fail, however, to look at the preppy environment that Elon tends to have. And upon getting here my freshman year, I was a little taken aback. A lot of my floor was like frat guys and stuff. So I originally felt like it was going to be pretty hard to go and grow into my queer identity and learn more about myself when a lot of my peers seemed to remind me of people I went to school with and grew up around. But with time, the spaces presented themselves. Finding Spirit and Pride in my freshman year was very pivotal to not only my growth as a queer person, but as a religious and spiritual person, and has only helped me made me feel more secure in my identity. My only exposure to religion was pretty narrow. Religion felt like a monolith for most of my life, and even though we all did things a little differently, felt like the people who were doing it the right way were looking down on you a little bit. So a lot of queer people I grew up with, for this reason, were not very religious, understandably so, or swore off religion as a whole. Yet this is not a part of myself that I wanted to sacrifice. Being Jewish always has mattered a lot to me, and I really wanted to work towards that balance. Spirit and Pride is one of the only places I have found that proudly encourages and works towards normalizing intersectionality. Going to my first coffee chat freshman year offered a glimpse into this cool, queer, alternative space that I didn't even know existed before I got here. It was inspiring to be welcomed by people of mixed identities and those who were working through them in many different ways. I felt more inspired than ever to embrace these complicated aspects of myself, and I felt now I had the resources to best explain myself to others. When I became a multi-faith intern and got invited to intern with Spirit and Pride as well, I was ecstatic to be a part of an experience that was so pivotal to my time at Elon and growth as a person. I wanted to host the hard conversations and make them easier and hopefully help other people find the balance that I am finding right now. Being queer can be hard. Being queer in religious spaces can be hard, but there's so much joy that comes with it. And I'm really grateful for initiatives like this that are helping change the narrative one step at a time and are a constant reminder that there's nothing wrong with what or how you believe. Thank you. Quick announcement, since Rabbi was talking about coffee chats, we have one later today at Oak House, 4:30 p.m. You all should come. Making bracelets and you get free coffee, so definitely come check it out. Thank you.